My name is Janet Rodriguez, founder of SoHarlem. I have been on a journey to increase access to arts and culture most of my life. This has led me to establishing SoHarlem. It is probably in my DNA. My mother worked in the garment district and she exposed me to craftsmanship early on, and my father spent most of his life fighting for justice in the Dominican Republic. 70s, I started working with a range of organizations committed to the role of artists of color and serving underserved communities. I co-founded Llama's Latin American Music and Alternative Spaces. This was an opportunity for Latino artists to perform beyond the Cuchifrito circuit. Llamas also produced Musica, a 60-minute film on the history of Afro-Cuban jazz in the United States. In the 80s, as manager of Aaron Davis Hall, I was working with a range of different institutions in Harlem, and I was overwhelmed by the number of artists and organizations in need of space. I reached out to the Harlem Urban Development Corporation, HUDC, and asked them how they were incorporating the arts into the development of Harlem. I ended up helping HUDC answer that question when they started planning to redevelop the Harlem Piers. I worked with the architectural and economic planners contracted by HUDC. I took the teams on tours of Harlem arts facilities, wrote studies, did surveys, and produced the Harlem on the Hudson Festival. Today, this area is primarily owned by Columbia University. I left New York to work for the Kentucky Arts Council, and while I focused on equity and access issues for individual artists in the Bluegrass state, I was really able to develop my appreciation and understanding of American crafts. I would return to work at the Schomburg Center, where earlier in my career I had conducted a feasibility study for what would eventually become a 25,000 square foot cultural center, which includes the Langston Hughes Theater. It was one of the only redevelopment projects that I worked on where something was actually built. I would return in 2000 to the Schomburg to produce their 75th anniversary. I spent close to 2 decades working in philanthropy, and I always focused on increasing support to artists and cultural organizations in underserved communities, such as the Lower East Side, Newark, Camden, Appalachia, New Orleans, Detroit, South Bronx, and of course Harlem, my home where I have lived most of my life. Perhaps the biggest takeaway from working in public, private, and corporate philanthropy, where I focused on community development, education, and our environment, is that it instilled a greater civic responsibility to my community. In 2004, I opened a creative outlet to address broader cultural needs in my neighborhood, the Sugar Hill section of Harlem. During my 5 years on St. Nicholas and 145th, we sold the works of more than 200 creative individuals and collectives. Straight Out of Harlem has morphed into SoHarlem, a social enterprise that works in partnership with the Janus Properties as well as other private and public entities, and we are committed to using creativity to generate jobs and strengthen our community.